Welcome, everybody, to Keston's Old School Comic Books. We are debuting a new feature on the channel where we spotlight a classic comic book cover, an artist, an image, you name it. Our guest today is a friend of mine, Tom Nordlie.
I am psyched to be talking with you today about Creig Flessel, who was one of the mainstays for DC Comics back in their pre-superhero days, and then on up through about 1942 or so. And I know you are very familiar with Mr. Flessel's work for DC.
To me, he is one of the most underappreciated cover artists of all time, and he may be the first great cover artist. And as you mentioned, he was so early when he started. So we're talking about the 1930s.
Yeah, when he started off, he was doing some cartoony, kid-friendly type stuff for titles like, I believe, New Comics and New Adventure. And one of my favorite covers from that era was New Adventure issue 16. There's a kid riding a surfboard. And I thought, wow, this is 1937. They have a surfing cover on a US comic book. That's got to be the first time that happened, I would think. As I understand it, the fledgling DC comic company was not doing all that well the first couple of years. Detective Comics was their first real hit. It was the first comic book to focus on a single theme. And of course, Creig Flessel did the covers of issue 2 through issue 19. And if you follow those along, you can really see his development as an artist and his effectiveness at communicating an idea to the viewer. I was wondering if you have any particular favorites amongst his detective covers.
Detective Comics number 13 is my favorite. And I noticed a few things about it that I'd like to share with you. So one is that I like that tree branch that's on the upper right-hand side because it does a nice job of sort of balancing out the composition.
Yeah.
Then when you zoom into the criminal, he looks just so menacing. The hand is like a shack hand. It's absolutely huge.
Yeah.
See, what makes this cover go from great to classic is a small detail, and that's the bracelet on his wrist. If you look closely, it's the skull and crossbones on there. To me, it just hits every pleasure spot in my brain.
There are no word balloons or sound effects on that cover. It's just this pregnant moment where you see, I assume it's Speed Saunders that we're seeing there, the fellow in the hat. He's reaching for his pistol, but is he going to get it out of the holster before that hand grabs him around the face? I don't know. A couple of other covers from Detective that are just like that for me. Number 14 with the sourpuss gangster who's ripping down his own wanted poster. I just love that. I'm waiting to hear him, start spouting out invective in a Edward G. Robinson kind of voice. Another one I really love is the last one he did for Detective, issue 19, where you have in the foreground a fellow on a rooftop looking down through a skylight, and inside the room that he's looking into, there's another man who is opening a safe. And we don't know, as the viewer, whether the fellow on the roof is a police officer, a criminal, something else, and whether the guy down there with the safe is a criminal, somebody with a legitimate interest in the safe, or what. And I can practically hear traffic noise and other ambient noise when I look at that scene.
And speaking of Detective Comics number 18, many people consider that to be Flessel's masterpiece. Can you speak to that cover a little bit?
Sure, yeah, that's the Fu Manchu cover. They're actually promoting something inside the comic. There's that little word strip across the lower right-hand corner where it says something to the effect of, inside, you'll read a story from noted author Sax Rohmer about Fu Manchu. And so here it is laid out for you. Laboratory situation, that really elaborate robe with all the illustrations on it. He must have put in some work on that. And another one that I really like that is sort of in the same theme is issue number 8, with that close-up of the Asian man who is running his hands through this little bowl of pearls. And that one really caught my attention because I think more so than any other cover Flessel did for DC, it has that L.B. Cole poster approach where you've got a black background and really bright, really saturated primary colors, kind of like my Kolchak logo here. And so it just pops out at you. Aside from the Detective Comics, of course, we got to talk about the Sandman, the original DC Golden Age Sandman, Playboy Wesley Dodds, and apparently a successful inventor as well, who'd put on the gas mask, the wide brimmed fedora hat, big overcoat, and go out fighting crime, rendering bad guys unconscious with his gas gun. I think that's terrific. And his sidekick is his girlfriend, glamorous Diane Belmont, who, strangely enough, never seems to have much of a problem with him going out to battle the underworld in his free time rather than hanging out with her and doing something a little safer.
A danger of doing this channel is that I'm spending a lot of time looking at comic books and then I get infatuated with a particular hero. And right now I am infatuated by two, and it's Sandman and the Spectre. Those two early DC dark characters, amazing. Sandman in particular. We're talking about Adventure Comics number 40. This is the first appearance of Golden Age Sandman. What a character and what an outfit. I don't know about you, but if my signature accessory was a gas mask, I'd probably be wearing army fatigues around it. Not the Sandman, however. He wears a bespoke double-breasted suit with an olive tie and a handkerchief folded just so. He's got a top hat and Oxfords, and get this, he's wearing spats. He's probably the only character in history, real or fictional, who's wearing spats with a gas mask.
He rendered the first 7 comic book covers DC published that featured the Sandman in Adventure Comics issues number 40, 42, 44, 46, 47, 51, and 60. Every one of those 7, I think, is just a masterpiece. He shows great perspective, like on 44, where the Sandman has opened up that wall safe and there's that big fat guy slumped against the bookcase. I can feel how heavy that guy is when I look at that cover. 46, where the Sandman's jumping over the fence to shoot the guy with the gas gun. He looks so light and fluid, and I just completely buy into the idea that, yeah, this guy is just athletically leaping over this fence. And a lot of artists are not good at depicting the human body in motion with real fluidity and a sense of realism, but Flessel's one of them. I brought along something to show you. I referenced this earlier. This is a reprint of the comic book that has the first appearance of the Sandman, New York World's Fair Comics from 1939. This apparently came out roughly April 30th, right as the fair opened. There is a Sandman story in here, but it's not illustrated by Flessel. It's illustrated by Bert Christman, who was one of the other artists on the title. In this story, here we go. This is in black and white. In this story, they set up Wesley Dodds as being almost like a Tony Stark type character, where he has created some kind of ray gun and the plans for it are stolen, but he has hidden the most important page out of the plans so that the crooks can't build the ray gun.
On the cover, Tom, is there a little circle that shows the Sandman?
Yes, there sure is. There it is right there. And according to something that I read, that's a Fred Gardner image, supposedly. And of course, besides doing cops and robbers stuff, he was also able to illustrate things like The Great Outdoors, that terrific cover with a canoe on, I think it's New Adventure 25. Adventures in Faraway Lands, one of the other New Adventure images has a fellow lifting somebody up, about to throw him down some stairs. And Disaster on the High Seas, there's another, I think it's New Adventure, where a whale has just smashed a whaling boat. And that's really something. And another thing that Flessel did late in his comic work that I really like is Prez, the First Teen President, the DC title that came out for like 6 issues or so in something like 1973. Flessel apparently, I think, inked or perhaps penciled a couple of the late issues of that. But he did pulps, he did children's books, he did instructional literature, he did syndicated newspaper comic strips, particularly the strip David Crane, which was about a Protestant minister. He was the artist on that from about 1960 to 1970, give or take. And he was still doing a single panel gag strip for his hometown newspaper right up until shortly before his death at the age of 96. And one thing I wanted to point out that I find very appropriate is that he died on July the 17th of 2008. And the very next day, July 18th, was the nationwide US premiere of the Batman film, The Dark Knight. And like we were talking about earlier, if it hadn't been for Creig Flessel's cover art, it's possible that Batman would not have debuted in Detective Comics at all, because Detective would have folded before issue 27.
Yeah, it's interesting that Detective Comics 27 and in the movie sort of bookmarked his life in some respects, and that he was always right before Batman. So everybody, thanks so much for checking us out, and we hope to see you around real soon.